And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again, and I've just watched the 16th movie of the MCU. And the 16th movie of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is, of course, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So, getting a fair way through it and getting towards the final straight run of the movies. Guardians of the Galaxy was a great movie. In fact, it was better the second time around. I think, having seen it the first time, having seen it in cinema, I remember it being a jokey movie, a funny movie. Obviously, it has all the standard Guardians of the Galaxy motifs, the music, the humour, the banter, the bright colours. But you know what? Actually, going back into it, much stronger than I remember it being, and a much more thoughtful and weighty movie than I remember. So, let's jump straight into it. It starts off after the original opening, which is set in Missouri in 1980, which obviously is a perfectly decent opening and introduces Meredith Quill and Ego as Kurt Russell. Then you get into modern day Guardians of the Galaxy, I guess, which starts off with the much maligned battle with the Groot dance sequence. And I remember when this came out, a lot of people complained that it was leaning far too much into the fan service, into the comedy, into the humour element, the music. Actually, this is a brilliant way to do the opening. Like, if you think of any other way they could have done this, had they played it straight, had they just been like, we're going to have a battle, these guys versus a squid monster, it wouldn't have been as good. It wouldn't have set the tone. It wouldn't have really brought you into all the characters. It wouldn't have brought you into the action and the vibe. This is actually possibly the best conceivable way to start and set up this movie. So, massive props for that. Really liked it. Really enjoyed it. What else can I say? The film continues on. The reintroduction of Yondu in this movie was really interesting because I totally forgot, and maybe I didn't even notice the first time. His scene where he gets reintroduced the first time is so haunting and lonely and bitter. So essentially it's him in this like cybernetic brothel by himself, just feeling really depressed, just looking out of a window. It's a very Tom King sort of moment. And it's just done really well because straight away, within about 20 seconds, it doubles the amount of characterization you had of Yondu in the entire first movie, which of course is really, really important when you consider the character beats and what they do with this movie. What else to say? Something I just want to point out just pretty randomly, can't think of a better way of saying this, the aesthetic of space in Guardians of the Galaxy, and this occurred to me just one of the random scenes, is very much like the aesthetics of space in Disney's Treasure Planet. I don't know if you've ever seen Treasure Planet. It wasn't especially good animation. Basically Treasure Island set in space. But a lot of the aesthetic here of sort of background space and what space is like and different planets and so on is basically straight out of that. And the reason I say that is, let's be completely honest, space is known for being two things. Very, very dark. Very, very empty. And what they do in Treasure Planet and what they do in Guardians of the Galaxy is they make it full of all this kind of like lovely landscape background details and bright colours and sort of nebulas of twisting clouds and streamers of like space smoke or gas or whatever it is. They basically populate it in this really colourful artistic way. And looking at Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I was looking at it and I suddenly thought, hang on, this looks exactly like Treasure Planet. Anyway, sorry, back to the movie. So yeah, obviously you get the great scene, which is the breakout from the Ravager ship, and that's awesome. Good bit of characterization on Rocket, good bit of characterization on Groot and Yondu. I mean, to be honest, the real coup of this movie is the character growth of some of the non-central characters. So Peter Quill goes through a bit of character growth. He meets his dad, he kills his dad. But in terms of the characters that really flesh out, that really have a definitive arc that changes, you've got Yondu, which is just done brilliantly. If you consider the transition his character takes in this movie, by the end of this movie, from where it was, even at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 1, it's absolutely astonishing. You've got this kind of a bitterness, you've got this loneliness, you've got this alienation, you've got this kind of lost samurai, you've got a hero who's lost his way sort of thing. It's just done brilliantly, as well as really leaning into the father-son dynamic that it has with Quill, which you never really got a sense of in the first movie. So that characterization and that entire arc, which obviously gets resolved with Yondu's death, phenomenal bit of writing. Secondly, Nebula. Like, who knew she was Karen Gillan? Like, I completely forgot that. I remember finding it out actually just before I watched Endgame and being like, no, this can't be Karen Gillan as in from Jumanji Karen Gillan. And man, firstly, she's an amazing actress. Like the fact that she can play this character and play it so well is astonishing. And secondly, the character growth of Nebula, again, if you consider where she was at the beginning or even the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 1 to where she is at the end of this movie, with a reconciliation with Gamora and an understanding of her own sort of role within her very broken family, absolutely fascinating, really extensive, powerful character arc. And finally, that brings me to Rocket. So, unlike Groot, Rocket undergoes quite a lot of personal epiphanies in this movie to eventually realise that he is part of this family. And Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is very much a family movie, not in the Vin Diesel Fast and Furious way, where it's all about family and everyone just gets on, but in an actual family way, where everyone's broken and hates each other, but they're still all together. And Rocket really encapsulates that, and his growth in this movie of trying to push people away and eventually reconciling with the idea that no matter what he does, they're family. Brilliant bit of growth, and really actually kind of necessary for the character as well. So really liked it, really impressed by it. And then the end of the movie ends with the death of Yondu, and the final scene is actually his funeral, which is quite a long scene, looking like a sort of a 6 to 7 minute scene. But it's perfect. It's brilliant. It's incredibly emotional. It's a great way to end the movie. It centres around two, and in fact it includes Nebula as well, so let's say 3 of the characters that have the most to contribute to the movie's growth. So that's Yondu, Rocket and Nebula. It's tasteful, it's artistic, it's emotionally resonant. It's just a brilliant ending for this movie. And again, it does it in a very colourful Treasure Planet way, like really colourful Treasure Planet way, but at the same time it has a somberness and sort of a gravity behind that, which actually is a good segue into talking about the soundtrack for this movie. So of course you've got Awesome Mixtape Volume 2 with all the pop culture music, but behind that you've got the official soundtrack for the movie, which when the score comes in, which admittedly isn't that often, you have got a score which is evocative of the strongest parts of the Endgame soundtrack, which is really surprising for me. I remember I noticed that in Guardians of the Galaxy 1, and I noticed it here. Really surprising, really interesting. So overall, awesome, really impressive movie, really solid sequel. I've got a couple of questions on this, a couple of threads to pull, I guess. Like, who is the Sovereign? I don't remember those from the comics. I've read a lot of comics, I've never heard of the Sovereign before, so were they made entirely for the movie? I guess so. And secondly, why tease Adam Warlock in the post-credits if he's not going to be in Endgame? If you know anything about the original Infinity Gauntlet comic, Adam Warlock was a key part of that. So that teaser for this movie, it feels like a bit of a misstep, to be honest. But otherwise, what can I say? This movie was awesome. The tone was brilliant. The character growth was brilliant. The comedy and the lightheartedness and the bright colour overlaid a really serious, intense film about personal growth and character arcs. I know some people malign this as being like a very expensive group therapy movie, but do you know what? If you're going to have a movie about family, especially in these circumstances, that seems to me like it makes a lot of sense. Great casting, great acting, great characterization, great music, and brilliant ending and sequence to it. Well-paced movie throughout, well worth watching. Anyway, those are my thoughts on this movie. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. Please let me know what you think of this series and any thoughts you might have about these films. Let me know how you're doing with the quarantine. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon and picking up my episodic novel, No Gods or Kings. Until tomorrow, when I'll be watching Thor Ragnarok, stay classy.